Hello and welcome to the Sharpening Report. Tonight, we welcome on a very special guest, first time on the Sharpening Report, David Wilber, author of Is God a Misogynist? Understanding the Bible's difficult passages concerning women. It is my honor to welcome David to the show. David, how you doing?
Hey, doing good, Josh. Thanks for having me on. As I said earlier, it's a great honor. I'm glad to be with you.
Oh, honor's all mine. I appreciate you coming on. So for those who might not be familiar with you or your work, can you introduce yourself? What led you to Christ, and how has that led to the work that you do today?
Sure. So my name's David Wilber. I'm an author and a Bible teacher. I focus a lot on Christian apologetics, how to defend the faith, how to defend the Bible. I actually grew up attending a Lutheran church, so my family raised me as a Christian, as a Lutheran. But I actually didn't come to know the Lord in a way that actually made a difference in my life until I was in high school. I got saved at a Baptist youth group event called Friday Night Fever, because that's what we were doing in the early 2000s. When I was in high school. But there was a Baptist youth group event I started attending, and I heard the message of the gospel. The youth leader was really into discipleship and getting kids plugged into the church. So I plugged in, and that was the start of it for me, of coming to know the Lord. In addition to that, I've always been interested in knowledge. I've always been interested in studying deep topics, and as well as debate and arguing with people. And so when I became a Christian, God naturally took those things that I was interested in and started using it. So in school, I was often put in the position of having to defend my faith because I had a lot of friends who didn't share my beliefs. I was a Christian. I had a lot of friends that weren't Christian, that were atheist or whatever. So I was driven, just because of the position I was in, the situation I was in, to have a response to those who ask about the hope within me, as Scripture commands us. So that's what I did. I dove into apologetics, and really since high school, that's always been a deep passion of mine. Eventually, I got involved in the Messianic movement, which, if anyone doesn't know, we're basically Christians who go to church on Saturday. We love Jesus. We highly emphasize the Old Testament and things like the Sabbath and the feast days of the Bible. So those are things that I'm interested in. I wrote another book on that topic. But yeah, it was within those circles that God kind of put me where I am today. I work for an apologetics ministry called 119 Ministries. And on my own, I've also written several books. And I'm just grateful to be able to serve the Lord in this area.
Amen. And that's so important. Apologetics is so important. I'm glad that you're involved with that. So, I have other really good friends that are as well. And a lot of people, because apologetics can get really deep, and it can get, we'll use terms that a lot of people might not understand. So a lot of times it's over people's heads. But that's what that's what I like about people like yourself, because I've seen some of your stuff, and it's easy to understand. One thing I really appreciated, it's actually how we met, is there was a recent kind of uptick in the popularity of this horrible false doctrine about that Paul was somehow like a false teacher or a false prophet or something. And I saw you had done a rebuttal to that idea, showing that no, we can trust Paul. His stuff is good, and it's all trustworthy. And I thought it was just so well done, the way that it was presented. I was like, wow, that's I already knew I was going to agree with that anyway, but it was presented in a way that's easy to understand, something that I could hand to anybody, and it would be like easy to understand. And so I appreciate that. You're a deep thinker, clearly, and you're I consider you're smarter than me, and so I appreciate that, getting to talk with you about that. But I really enjoy how you present your information as easy to understand. You're not, I haven't seen anything from you where it's like boastful, or like you're smart and you're going to show off to everybody, and sometimes in some apologetic circles we see that when people get into it for the wrong reasons. So I really like that. Your presentation style I think is fantastic, and actually probably on a future episode we'll have to talk about the Paul stuff, because originally we were going to do that, but then you came out with the book, and that is going to be the topic of today. I think this is such an important topic because the church is kind of split on this issue. What's the role of women in church leadership, or how does the Bible describe women? Are women like a lower class citizen, or is it equal but separate? There's all these questions. So generally speaking, because I think we get most of our opposition on this matter from typically left-leaning cultures. So generally speaking, what does our current left-leaning culture say about women and Christianity? What do they say about us?
Great question, and thank you for those kind words earlier. I really appreciate that. That's certainly what I hope to do is be able to help people, because there are a lot of complicated issues that we deal with as Christians that people have questions about, and being able to equip your everyday Christian with answers that they can give to those topics is what I'm passionate about, and so that means a lot to me that you see God using me in that area in an effective way. But with your question of what is the narrative, right? What is the cultural narrative of modern secular society as it concerns this topic of women and Christianity? Well, many modern feminists, they will argue that the God of the Bible is portrayed as a misogynist, hence the title of my book. He's a misogynist. That just means he hates women. He looks down on women, right? He doesn't consider women on the same level of value as men. It's often said that the Bible regards women as the mere property of men and of lesser value than men. And so, for instance, there's a feminist author. She wrote a book called Women versus Religion. Her name's Karen Garst, and she actually argues that religions like Christianity are, quote, the last cultural barrier to gender equality. So she sees Christianity as a barrier to gender equality. That's the reason there's inequality on her view. She also says that the Bible is, quote, not sacred or the inspired word of a deity because it was written by men who believed women were their property. There's another feminist author named Lori Wiseman. She says, quote, vocal feminism and atheism now are moral obligations. I'd actually like to ask her how she bases, where she gets these moral obligations from, because she's an atheist. But anyway, that's a side point. She says, vocal feminism and atheism now are moral obligations. Anything less makes us complicit in the dehumanization, commoditization, and sexual exploitation of women. So she sees religion as all of these things that dehumanizes women, sexually exploits them. The feminist writer Taslima Nasreen writes, quote, if one believes in women's rights, one first has to cast away one's religious identity. All religions are anti-women. No one can be pro-woman while supporting anti-woman dogmas. And of course, by anti-woman dogmas, she means the values and the ethics in the Bible, the teachings of Christianity. Those are anti-woman dogmas, according to her. So, to answer your question, this is the narrative. The narrative among modern feminist critics is that Christianity is bad for women. It opposes equality, it dehumanizes women, and it's a barrier to gender equality. Now, of course, as I argue in detail in my book, this narrative is completely false, but that is the narrative that we as Christians are dealing with in the culture.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, they And I see this a lot too with the arguments against the Christian church's treatment of women is usually so shallow. You can tell that not one of them has actually spent time in a church or a Christian environment. So, how are women actually treated in most Christian churches? Are the secular feminists correct in any of their assertions, or are they just way off base here?
Okay, so really great question. What I argue in my book is that what many of these modern feminists are reacting to is not Christianity, but an unbiblical distortion of Christianity. Churches that are based on biblical teaching, they affirm the value of women. They affirm the biblical teaching that both men and women are created in God's image. Both men and women are equal in worth and purpose to serve God and to bring him glory. So in those churches that affirm biblical teaching, women are treated the same as men in many ways. Of course, men and women are different, but ontologically, we are the same, we're the same in value. There's no ontological difference. We're the same in value to God. We're created in his image to serve him, and we're endowed with intrinsic dignity and worth. In saying that, I do want to affirm the feminists in one way. Not all of them are angry for no reason. There have been some churches and some segments of Christianity that have held unbiblical views about women's value and so forth. And so therefore there has been, mistreatment, of women. And so what I would argue, and what I do argue in my book, is that there is some misplaced outrage in many ways. There's misplaced outrage. It's not Christianity that's the problem, but a distorted, unbiblical religion that some people label as Christianity. And of course, I have no interest in defending an unbiblical religion. I'm interested in defending biblical Christianity, which does affirm the value of women. And so that's what I do in the book.
Yeah, definitely. We see that same kind of straw man tactic too in a lot of other areas against the church, like slavery, for example.
Right.
They'll say, well, Christians will use the Bible to promote slavery or to endorse it. It's like, no, there might have been, a couple hundred years ago, there might have been a very small number of people calling themselves Christian that did that, but that teaching isn't intrinsically Christian at all. You can't find anything really in the Bible that would support that. And, a lot of the verses that typically get brought up, it's either a misunderstanding of what, the law is actually protecting, because there's a lot of protections for the quote unquote slaves. And then usually it's a misunderstanding of what a slave actually is in biblical context. So yeah, we see that same kind of thing with the treatment of women. So let's kind of compare these lifestyles here, because you have, lifestyles of like secular feminism, and then lifestyles of like what the Bible would say like a woman should live by. So what kind of lifestyle does secular feminism promote for women? If the secular feminists had their way, and I know that we're kind of speaking generally here, because not all of them fit into the same bucket, but just generally speaking, what kind of lifestyle would they have for women? What do they promote?
Great question. I get into this a lot. I have an entire chapter in my book devoted to this. The title of the chapter is Christianity versus Feminism, which is better for women. And so in that chapter, I compare the values of Christianity with the values of modern secular feminism. And I show what I believe, which is that modern feminism actually hurts women, whereas Christianity elevates and celebrates women. Number one, let's just think about this at a very basic level. We all agree, Christian and atheist alike, we all agree in our culture today that women should be valued and protected and honored. Generally, that's the case. We all agree with that. Well, take Christianity away for a second. If atheism is true, then on what basis do women or men have any objective moral worth at all? We're merely the accidental byproduct of chance, no different than any other living organism on the speck of dirt we call Earth. We've all evolved from primordial goo, the same as mosquitoes and rats. So if atheism is true, then why should we treat human beings as special? Why should we treat women as special? Where do we get these delusions that we have these moral obligations toward one another, that people have dignity, that people are worthy of respect, that women are worthy of respect? On the atheistic view, humans are just animals, and animals have no moral responsibility. So the secular feminist claim that we have to support women's rights or women are deserving of rights, on atheism, there's simply no basis for that moral judgment. Why? Because humans are just animals. And as I said, animals, we don't have moral responsibility. We don't condemn male dolphins as gang rapists when they forcibly copulate with female dolphins. Why? Because they're just being animals. So if humans are just animals too, then we really don't have any basis on which to affirm the value of women. We have no basis to say that male-female equality is good, that that's something that we should pursue in society. There's no basis for it. So feminism, it fails to provide a moral basis for the dignity and the worth of women. It also maintains ideals and values that devalue and harm women. Take, for instance, what I like to call modern feminists' highest sacrament, which is abortion. Modern feminism's highest sacrament. Countless female babies are being slaughtered in the womb every day. The most obvious problem with this feminist ideal, this modern feminist ideal, is that nothing says you hate women more than advocating for the right to murder them. According to modern feminists, some girls don't deserve equal rights. Therefore, modern feminists can't claim to fight for the rights of women since they actively fight against the rights of some women, namely baby girls in the womb. So it's all or nothing. Either you want all women to be protected and given every opportunity to have success, or you don't. If you don't support the rights of baby girls in the womb, you don't support women's rights. So once again, modern feminism fails to affirm the value and dignity of women in this regard. And it's actually modern feminism that opposes women's rights in this regard. They oppose the rights of some women. Abortion, just to add to that, abortion not only hurts baby girls, but it also hurts women themselves who receive abortions. I have a couple of studies that I go through in the book, but according to one recent meta-analysis study published by the British Journal of Psychiatry, women who had an abortion, quote, experienced an 81% increased risk of mental health problems. 81% increased risk of mental health problems compared to pregnant women that carry their babies to term. The study also found that women who experienced an abortion were considerably more likely to develop an anxiety disorder, experience depression, abuse alcohol, and commit suicide. So I mentioned more examples in my book, but it's clear that modern feminism is an obstacle to women's rights. It's an obstacle to women's value and well-being and dignity. It's not an effective vehicle for achieving these values that we say we hold. It's an obstacle to those very values. Unlike secular feminism, biblical Christianity provides an objective basis for female dignity and equality. As I said earlier, God created both men and women in his image. He bestowed upon both man and woman intrinsic value and purpose. As the scholar Dr. Richard Davidson puts it, quote, the fundamental equality of man and woman is unhesitatingly proclaimed in the first chapter of the Bible. So, scholars say that this Genesis 1, right? Man and woman are created. It's an unhesitating proclamation of male-female equality. Also, the Bible sanctifies sex as a sacred act to be enjoyed only within marriage, where women feel honored and protected. In the Christian view, women are not objects to be used and discarded like, they're not sexual objects. Sex is a gift to be lovingly shared between husband and wife. It's actually Christianity that upholds a woman's value as a person, in this regard. What does modern feminism, largely advocate for? Sexual liberation, right? Which reduces women to a sexual object. Christianity also, I go into much more detail about this in my book again, but I document how these biblical values that we're going through right now, that's undeniable the impact that these values have had on women throughout history. Christianity was responsible for passing the first laws against sexual slavery in the ancient world, for example, that elevating the status of countless women that were, dehumanized before, reduced to sexual objects before. Christianity is responsible for liberating those women and elevating them to the status of a person made in the image of God. You can't treat these women this way. So Christianity did that historically around the 4th century. So when we affirm and live by the Bible's values and principles, it creates a much better life and situation for women. I believe that feminism, modern feminism today, is a step back from women's progress. It's a step back from achieving real male-female equality, real, affirming the value of women. It's an obstacle. It's not a vehicle for achieving those things. Christianity is.
Yeah, definitely. And those are such good points, and especially the historical context and how it leads into our modern context, because there's a lot of misconceptions today. They're just all-out attacks on Christianity and specifically from secular feminists, that they think that the lifestyle of a Christian woman is basically being chained in front of the oven, being pregnant the entire time and basically not allowed to go anywhere. And it's funny because I've grown up a Christian. I've always been around Christians. I've never seen that. And everyone I know, and of course this is just anecdotal, but everyone I know would be like furious if they knew that one of their guy friends was treating their wife like that. So we talked about the lifestyle that secular feminism promotes. What kind of lifestyle in our modern day today? What kind of lifestyle does the Bible actually promote for women, and why should women abandon feminism in favor of Christianity?
Like I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, because of the contrast in values, right? Modern feminist values, number one, modern secular feminism, there's not even an objective basis to affirm a woman's value to begin with. So already atheism fails in that regard. Number two, the values of modern feminism degrade and harm women, whereas the values promoted in the Bible actually elevate and celebrate women. I gave a couple of the examples earlier. Men and women are created equal in God's image. The biblical values with regard to the Bible's sexual ethic, that women are, their sex is to be shared between husband and wife. A woman's not just to be, used and abused and thrown away. And we'll get into that a little bit later, I think, when we start talking about some difficult passages in the Bible. But yeah, these biblical values, I think, are crucial. And this in equality. We're all talking about equality and how male-female equality is so important. That's what the Bible affirms. From Genesis 1 to Revelation, the Bible affirms this value, and the New Testament even goes beyond that, and doesn't go beyond it, but it reaffirms that biblical value. What did Jesus do? How did Jesus interact with women, right? The first evangelist the first great evangelist in the book of John, John 4, was the Samaritan woman, this broken woman, sinful woman. And Jesus took the time to minister to her directly and empowered her to make a huge difference in her community. And he revealed himself as the Messiah to her. And you just look at how Jesus treats women throughout the New Testament. You look at the teachings of Paul, how he reaffirms male-female equality in Galatians 3, that we're all one in Christ Jesus. He talks about, when you consider like the cultural context, the historical context of what women were dealing with in the Greco-Roman world, how women were really treated like second-class citizens. The Bible elevates women. Just to give an example, in the Greco-Roman culture, a woman was expected, if she was married, she was expected to be faithful to her husband, but a husband could pretty much have sex with whoever he wanted. And most of the time he would have sex with slaves, he would sleep with prostitutes and other men. That was just the Greco-Roman culture. It was very promiscuous. The Bible directly combats that. In Paul's letter in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he talks about the relationships between husband and wives and how a man's body is not his own, but his wife's. And he says, you husband, you're not allowed to do whatever you want with your body. Your wife owns your body. You're not allowed to go and sleep with all these other people. Your wife owns your body. And so Christianity's sexual ethic, it elevates women, in that way. It treats them as a person made in God's image, equal to man. That a married couple, that was an example of inequality in the culture, that Christianity was very radical in promoting women's rights in that area. And we see that historically all over the place. I have citations throughout my book historically of examples like the pagan critics, early pagan critics of Christianity actually criticized Christianity as a religion of women because it was so popular with women, because women were so excited about the values that Christianity upheld and the opportunities that it gave them.
That's amazing. Yeah. And typically when people actually, take time to immerse themselves in Christian culture, mm-hmm. they'll find that. I mean, it's very mm-hmm. rare, I think. Well, actually, it never happens that you're going to actually have a Christian man who is walking by the Spirit, and they're going to abuse their wife or mistreat
exactly.
their wife. It doesn't exactly. happen. Yeah. What does happen is you'll have abusive men calling themselves Christian or thinking that they're Christian because their family is, or for whatever reason, but really it's more of like a cultural Christianity thing. They're not really walking in the Spirit. They don't really have a relationship with Jesus because they'll mistreat their wives and then they don't feel conviction about it at all. They don't repent. Right. And so, I definitely see that too. If people actually take the time to look at what Christianity teaches, even, modern day Christianity, and then, the Bible, what it actually teaches, it's very pro-woman and very pro-equality, but it's true equality. Our culture today, they'll say equality, but really what they mean is supremacy. A lot of times right. Secular feminism, when you look at their version of equality, it's really supremacy over a man. And, supremacy in those regards, no matter who it's coming from, is never good unless we're talking about the supremacy of Jesus Christ. Then, of course, that's fine. We have a lot more to talk about. So I want to get into some of the common misconceptions about the Bible, such as, what's the Bible's stance on rape? What does it endorse polygamy? Things like that people have questions about. But for that, we are going to have to go to the members only section at dailyrenegade.com. So before we do that, if people are interested, where can they get your book and where can they follow you online?
Sure. Yeah, you can connect with me at davidwilber.com. That's David, WILBER.com. That's my personal website. Also, you can get the book at isgodamisogynist.com or at my website, davidwilber.com, or search for it on Amazon. It's available there. It's Is God a Misogynist?
Fantastic. All right, we are going to move into members-only territory. So if you are not a member, if you're viewing for free on YouTube, head on over to dailyrenegade.com and get a membership today. And most of you already know the story, but the reason that we had to start doing this is because YouTube was deleting our videos. We are going to be talking about some things that YouTube probably won't like because they never do anything pro-Christianity, anything pro-conservatism they're not going to like. So head on over to dailyrenegade.com, get a membership today if you feel led, and help us build that ministry. That would be great to have you there, and then you'll get the rest of this sharpening report, plus you'll get full episodes of everything we produce. We have a bunch of shows. You'll definitely find something that you like. So everybody viewing for free, once again, head on over, dailyrenegade.com. Members, hang on the line. Everybody else, thank you so much, and until next time.